अस्सलाम वालेकुम एवरीबॉडी। मेरा नाम समर हसन है और जैसे कि आप जानते हैं मैं को फाउंडर हूँ एपिफनी की। आज हम नंबर 13th एपिसोड के साथ आपके पास आए हैं एपिफनी टॉक्स की। जैसे कि आप लोगों को मालूम है एपिफनी टॉक्स हमने इसलिए इंट्रोड्यूस कराया था कोविड सिनारियो के अंदर, क्योंकि बहुत सारे क्वेश्चंस आ रहे थे कि अब हमें क्या करना चाहिए, अब कोविड के सिचुएशन के अंदर कैसे पिवट करना चाहिए, कैसे हम इस अपॉर्चुनिटी को इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं। प्लस दूसरी तरफ क्या आ रहा था कि बहुत सारी इंडस्ट्रीज हैं जिनके लिए न्यू अपॉर्चुनिटीज खुल रही थी, और बहुत सारी इंडस्ट्रीज थी जो कि नेगेटिवली इम्पैक्ट हो रही थी। सो हमने एपिफनी टॉक्स का पूरा जो मकसद था वो ये था टू मैप आउट कि क्या अपॉर्चुनिटीज हैं और क्या चैलेंजेस हैं और उनको कैसे हमने बेस्ट यूटिलाइज करना है और इस डिफिकल्ट टाइम को हमने कैसे गुजारना है। पहले एक महीना लगता था, बस एक महीना लगेगा उसके बाद ये प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व हो जाएगी, बट ऑफ कोर्स नाउ वी नो कि ये दिस इज समथिंग व्हिच इज गोइंग टू बी हियर टू स्टे फॉर सम टाइम। So, and you also know कि हमने काफी सारे in the month of June we did a lot of sessions on gaming because that's one of the biggest areas which is growing rapidly right now, especially COVID world में। अच्छा, आज का जो सेशन है वो हमें ज्यादा इंग्लिश में ही कंडक्ट करना पड़ेगा क्योंकि हमारे जो गेस्ट हैं वो इंटरनेशनल गेस्ट हैं। So let me quickly introduce him. Reinout, जैसे उनकी एक्चुअली प्रोनाउंसिएशन है। He's a games investor and strategic business consultant specializing in the gaming industry. तो गेमिंग इंडस्ट्री में बहुत ज़्यादा महारत हासिल करते हैं। Reinout established his credentials through his own successful investments, startups, consulting, बहुत सारी एडवाइजरी बोर्ड पोजीशंस हैं डिफरेंट गेमिंग इंडस्ट्रीज के अंदर जो ये होल्ड करते हैं, डिफरेंट गेमिंग स्टार्टअप्स के अंदर जो ये होल्ड करते हैं। एंड obviously he interacts with a lot of different key stakeholders in this fast-paced industry. So today we're going to talk a lot to him about from idea to IPO. कैसे आप करते हैं? How do you map out your journey when you just have an idea, especially in the gaming industry where we know that monetization is one of the biggest challenges that we see. How do you actually make your idea sustainable and profitable to the extent that the gaming investors want to actually invest in your startup? उसके अलावा Reinout also releases new episodes of his games podcast. A games podcast है जो वो run करते हैं twice a week. उनके sessions, उनकी podcasts होती हैं that go live. And obviously through that he offers a whole range of expertise in the gaming industry to his listeners. So without much ado, I'm going to welcome Reinout to break on the show. Hello. Good evening. How are you?
I'm fine. It's 5 o'clock here in the region of Amsterdam. I'm living in Haarlem, just above Amsterdam, and it turns out that we have a very rainy summer.
Okay. So it's been raining in Karachi nowadays. Because we're in the midst of monsoons. So in Islamabad we had a few rains. I'm based out of the capital city, but my colleagues are, some of my colleagues are in Karachi as well. So yes, we've been having some rain as well over here.
Okay. Well, I heard you talking about COVID, and I have to say that during the COVID period that we were isolated, we had such amazing weather. The sun was shining. I think we were all tempted to go outside, but we were not allowed. It's really nasty for a lot of restaurants and bars that have the terraces out. That now, the tourists are sort of back. We're seeing some people from across Europe visiting our country, but they don't get very good weather. So,
so which is a pity, by the way, because I've been to Amsterdam and I absolutely loved it, and also to Leiden. I think I really like Leiden as well. It's beautiful. So I think,
it's Amsterdam with also the canals, and Haarlem is what they call Little Amsterdam, and I love my country.
All right, so Reinout, tell us a little bit about you, right? So we talked a little bit, I introduced you briefly in Urdu as well, so that our audience can understand. But go ahead and tell us more about yourself and what you do.
So very, very well, nicely introduced with the Reinout. Thank you for that. So most people call me Ryan. So I've lived in the US, but mostly in Holland, the Netherlands. Around about 20 years ago, got in contact with gaming. Gaming back then was nowhere near where it is today. I always make a joke when I say, when I started, you actually had to download a game which installed on your computer, and you actually had to pay for it. So literally, if your computer would be busted, you lost the game. So having started a few companies, gaming started to grow as an industry. Through starting up a company, also got in contact with investors. So you learn the process of how to get investment on board, obviously the contracting part. And then, yeah, if you're lucky, because I always consider it, well, you're a lucky person if someone actually says, your company is an interest to us. And then obviously you're dealing with an exit, as they call it, or M&A, merger and acquisition. So then different contracts, different perspectives come to the table. So witness that. And then obviously on the side of investing in games companies, you're on the other side of the table. And you look at it also from a perspective of being an entrepreneur in gaming. And I always like the idea of getting to know the founders well. So the track record of founders, if they can attract talent, retain the talent. And then obviously at a later stage, then you're actually going to look at their games and obviously at the models around the games. So been doing that. And I have to say the last couple of years, it has actually shifted more to private equity, meaning, the larger transactions, which is definitely a lot of fun. Again, I always, I'm amazed how sometimes you can deal for more than 6, 8, 9 months to raise 2-3 million compared to deals that are 50 million, 100 million plus that can actually go so fast. It's amazing to me, but it's also fun to work in that atmosphere. So bottom line, I have my own consultancy firm, which basically beholds that investors or other stakeholders, management are basically calling me and say, hey, Ryan, we're dealing with certain things. Could be corporate strategy, could be the right storytelling, assistance with identifying which kind of investors could be interesting for your company, but also internal processes. Of course, we're dealing lately a lot with diversity. We're dealing with treating your co-workers in a proper way. Used to call employees human capital because I find them very important. They're capital because they make your company grow. They are the part of the emerging tech. So where a lot of people talk about tech, I'm talking about people. And then lastly, I always emphasize the reversed pyramid where the management is down under and facilitates the human capital to be successful in the gaming industry.
So, a lot of what you're saying is music to my ears because most of my life has been dedicated towards human capital development. And I think that is one of the biggest resources, biggest assets that my country has. So we've got 67% of people that are under the age of 30, which means that we have this huge youth potential. Everybody talks about the potential, but capitalization of that potential has been very tricky because of certain issues in the education system, which predate and which have existed for a long time. But I think one of the things which is really interesting for me is gaming represents something which is interesting because young people are playing games. A lot of them have aspirations to become game developers. On the other side, the industry is all encompassing. So if you're a writer, you can be absorbed. If you're an artist, you can be absorbed. If you are a computer scientist, you can join in, right? So I think that is really important. And I'm really looking forward to working with you afterwards as well, on the human capital development. Because talent is there, creativity is there. But tell us now, when I ask you from the perspective of, because the topic today is idea to IPO. So what happens? Can you, outline the different steps that a particular gaming studio has to go through, or a game, even if it's a simple game, how would you look at all of the steps? Could you map those out for our audience?
Yeah. Funny enough, when we started in this industry, I always said we have no Bible of what a good game is or game development. So dropouts come to us. Harvard people go to EA because at the time EA was already quite a significant player in the market, and they were having structures of finance and corporations, these kind of things. And we came completely from another side. So everything we did was by learning. So by doing, we learned, and along the way, we knew that we were making mistakes. And it's not about that you have to be a dropout or something, but it's not about education itself. It's not about, it's about the willingness to learn. And I think that has brought gaming as fast as it has done. I mean, we as an industry, some people say we're 20 years old. I beg to differ. I think it's 30. It's already longer. But by getting the first computers on the PCs, by now having the games on mobile, it is such a rush that we have gone through on the technology side also. And now people can actually stream from their homes. So you can actually do a gameplay. Other people can watch it. They can talk to you. Other people can actually chat with you. I mean, it's everywhere. So gaming is not entertainment. Entertainment is gaming.
Yes, I agree. And I think it's also become, it's also an equalizer, because anybody sitting wherever you are in the world, you can actually, play against teams from any, the best countries in the world in terms of development.
It's not only on where I'm involved, it's multicultural. And that's sometimes what is stunning to me, what I'm reading right now and seeing on television and reading in the newspapers, that we still talk about racism. We still talk about, if it's about religion, race, or whatsoever. I never thought about it. I mean, if someone is enthusiastic to do something with us, either work or cooperate, I've never looked at if someone had a certain religion, skin color, or gender, or whatsoever. And I think it's good that it's getting addressed also in our industry. We've seen the things at Riot. I'm bullish about things like Microsoft now saying up to 2025 we will spend 150 million to hire more colored people. I think that should have been baked in their DNA already. They're a US company. If you mirror the society in the US, it's a lot of different kind of colors or skin that should have been there. So, and then secondly, I wouldn't look at 225. I would say in eternity, I would actually, as Microsoft, be responsible for that. And so lastly said,
there's something that we say in Urdu, it's like der aaye durust aaye, okay, which means that even if it's late, better late than never. It's the same thing in Urdu as well. So better late than never. And I know that there is more focus on diversity nowadays. And, there is obviously the industry is also going through a whole new, it's going through something pivotal. And hopefully something good will come out of this, mini crisis. Right?
It is. And I mean, that's a good thing. And I think it's also good that certain women stand up and say, hey, we didn't like it. And it's not like you have to condemn the companies, but you have to listen and do something with it. And as long as that is happening, I think gaming, as I just said, entertainment is gaming. So that means it's for everyone. So most logical thing behind that would be then everyone can and should create games too.
Yes. And that's my question to you. So as an investor, do you also invest in indie games?
It's okay. The definition indie games. So that's a very interesting question. If you talk about, and this is right away quite factual to it, I meet a lot of indie gamers right now, obviously via Zoom. I always respond on my emails from whoever sends me an email. I think that's the most what I can do, even if I'm not interested. I will never say I don't like it. I will always say like, okay, I have a different opinion, and everyone is entitled to their opinion. An indie game developer can be one person, two persons, can be 4 or 5. But for example, an indie studio can also be 20 people that maybe exist for 2 years, have had one good game, one maybe on the way. That's still an indie game developer. So the definition for me would be if it happens to be a 2 or a 3 person studio, what I've come to notice that a lot of times they are really fallen in love with their product, that one game. And they always say, that game I'm going to launch, which is good. And my question would then be, supposedly, if that game wouldn't be a success, what would you do? And if you answer like, yeah, I would iterate and make it better, and I would say like, whoa, but at a certain point in time, if you really see that the game is not working, and if they then say like, no, but it will be, then I will say no, because I know they will say goodbye to games. So if you're actually saying like, no, we're thinking portfolio, you're actually through to the next phase, and we can talk about portfolio. We can talk about cross promotion. We can talk about the DNA of the studio. I mean, it's not like you're starting a shooter and then do a puzzle game or something. You create a DNA when you start with 1 or 3 friends or good colleagues or former colleagues. So track record and vision. That's the important. And yeah, so indie is a wide audience of game developers out there, and they can be in Pakistan, they can be in Holland. Lately, I'm doing a lot in the Middle East, where it's really coming up now from actually saying, hey, we can localize everything to we can develop. Same in Latin America. It's such a fast-paced industry that, although a lot of people say that I know a lot of people, every day I can honestly say I'm meeting, via LinkedIn or other socials or my inbox, I'm getting quite a lot of emails. I'm always meeting new people, and I'm still learning every day of new tech, new insights, and new success. All that.
I've got a question, when it comes back to investment, right? So I work a lot with, Epiphany works a lot with entrepreneurs as well. And like any entrepreneur, it's their baby. And, if you criticize the baby, it's very, very tricky. It's very difficult for them to absorb it. When you talk about artists and creative entrepreneurs, of course, that's going to be one of the challenges as an investor to tell them, look, either you pivot or, you have to twist it around or you have to restart. You just have to go back to the drawing board again. So what are some techniques or maybe just quote some examples of how you've handled it nicely? And maybe where you were unable, maybe where the you're smiling, so you're thinking.
I basically call them and tell them that needs to go differently. Now, obviously, it's never fun if you have to have those discussions. So I never believe in being bullish. Then I believe in looking at the data. So I would always reckon that you would have, before you put any money in or before you start working with any company, you would always have a chat. And you always look at down scenarios, potential down scenarios. What if? And that's most likely the intake that any investor should do. Or if you want to acquire a company, what if? And go through it. So upfront, you already know what kind of type of investor or advisor you have on board. So if the what if becomes evident that the game is not working, you can actually say, okay, we're taking 2-3 months to make changes. We're gonna give it our best shot, but after a certain point, then there is that decision, and the decision means already when I see that something is not working, start working on a second or third. Start working on your portfolio already, and do as much and best that you can do on the current game. But if it's not working, then you have to unplug, because then you have to pull all the resources away from it and put it on a new, fruitful new IP. Because for there is a point of where your coworkers are also getting a bit depressed. It's not getting better. It's not improving. Are we bad? Are we not? And then in the news you read all the time like, oh, this company did this, and suddenly they went on, and it always
absolutely. Yes, and there's always positive news that comes out, right? And you're always thinking, oh my God, how did they do it? And oh my God, what are we doing? I mean,
there is no website where it says today we have 5 companies that explain how it went completely crap. Or there is a press release when someone said, we did completely lousy work, and there you have it. There's always entrepreneurs, founders, investors that go on stage and tell you, okay, so we have this successful company, otherwise I wouldn't be on stage. And we also have some setback, But then it's easy. By then they already have investment. By then they can easily unplug. But for an indie game developer, if your heart and soul, blood, sweat, and tears is in there, I understand that it's very difficult to say at one point, okay, this was it. It's not working. We need to make a change. We need to work on other IPs.
Absolutely. Okay, so understood. So when you're okay,
it's
so
meaningful. You learn lessons from it, right? And so I always advise to, and not directly then, but you have your Friday afternoon drink or gathering, and during these informal talks, you can actually talk about it. So what do you think we could have done better? I mean, as long as you take some key learnings out of it, in the end, it's not for the good, but you learn from it. That's basically what I want to say.
Yes, and I think one of the things that you're reflecting on, which we think about often in the entrepreneurship world anyway, in general as well, right? We don't talk enough about the duck stories. So interesting anecdote, when I was setting up Epiphany as a company more than 3 years back, I'd worked in a lot of different entrepreneurial initiatives, contributed there. But this was my first ever startup or first ever enterprise, right? And I kept thinking, okay, I have to work with young entrepreneurs. And we started off as an acceleration program anyway. That was the core objective. And I kept thinking, oh, I don't have enough duck stories. And then God heard me and he said, oh, you want duck stories?
Yeah.
There you go. Let me give you some duck stories, right? So I think what you're reflecting upon is really important. Taking the lessons and walking away a much smarter game developer than before, or a founder than before. I think that's key. Okay, so we've talked about what sort of research do you think can go in when you're actually developing the game? So when it's an idea, what do you need to do to make sure that it's a better idea?
Right now, I'm looking at my screen. I see you, but I also see the tabs that I have open, which is, for example, GamesBeat. It's pocketgamer.biz, gamesindustry.biz, some esports sites. Every day I read the news. And that means that I'm aware of what is happening. I'm aware of which games are out there. I'm aware of good things, failures, reports from at Annie's, the Sensor Towers, Super Data. So I always believe that every person that works in the studio should be reading in the morning when they come to as long as they go into the studio these days or from home, they should read general interest, but also general knowledge. Second, I think it's important to have a group of people around you that can advise you. That could be on game development, could be on leading the studio. I mean, you're leading a company. And then along the way, maybe with funding, these kind of things. So running a studio is, in the beginning, it's fun because everyone can basically work on a game. But at a certain point, someone of the studio, mostly the CEO, will then have to go out and basically talk to investors, talk to publishers, and that takes his or her attention span away from the company, from the studio. So someone needs to take over. So it's very important to, one, get the right information from the industry, two, get proper advisors, friends of the company, as I call it, and three, very clear the role definition, who is doing what in running the company. So who's external, who's internal, and then dividing internally in game development, maybe a part of marketing. So even if you're 3 techies or 4 techies, someone needs to be the lead, let's say the face of the company. Someone needs to take on the marketing. Someone needs to make sure that, for example, if you're working with app stores, that contact is good. So you have to multitask in the beginning. And those learnings are very important because at a certain point, you will hire certain people. And let's say I need to hire someone that can do in-store marketing. Then if I were the techie, I can actually onboard that person, bring on the knowledge that I have as far as I came to that point, and that person is going to take it over, which frees me up to work further in development, and that person will educate it further in app marketing or marketing in general. And that is the basis of the DNA of a company. And I think that is decisive also how you envision your company in 3-5 years from now. It's important when an investor is talking to you. It's the blueprint for potential success.
So I was just quickly typing in because I think these are really nuggets of very, very critical information. Okay, so now the game, the idea is there and you've actually developed a prototype of the game. When actually, I've got a question there. When do you approach the investor? At the time when you have the mock-up and some characters ready, some storyline at that point in time, or should you have developed the prototype and then go to the investor? So you actually show you've got skin in the game.
Should approach you, right?
Sorry?
The investor should approach you.
Oh.
Your game is so good that they're all standing in line.
Okay.
It happens.
Okay. How do you do that? How do you do that?
Yeah, that's difficult. It happens to a few. Coming from the indie perspective, friends and families, I have to always say that, because if I say friends and families, I sometimes read that people say friends, families, and fools. And fool is a negative wording. And, you know, I do understand, because it's a high risk investment. But why is it friends and family? They like you, they love you, they cherish you, they nurture you, and they want to see you become successful. So friends and family will be first in line to help you. Secondly, there are angels. So when you are well aware and you read the news, and you can read global news, but you also have to make sure what is around and who is around in your local gaming community. There are potential local games investors, angel investors, that have had good success on either raising money, exiting the company, that are more than happy to listen. And, you know, it might be that they invest, but don't be upset with them when they say no, because the word no you will hear many more times. But a games investor that says no might have a reason. Try to learn from it. And although he or she is not investing, maybe she would be a good advisor that occasionally you can reach out to and ask certain questions. Who knows? Maybe he or she will then still change her mind or his mind to start working with you. So the approach, when? Yeah, obviously when you have a demo. I mean, you can do proper storytelling, and where you say like, hey, we're thinking about this kind of game. We're seeing the industry being like that. We're being in this segment. The segment is this big. And we think if we do X, Y, Z, we can be successful. Some might raise money. I've been involved in a company that raised from some drawings 17 million, 17. Amazing. Did it go well? No, it did not. But most likely when you have a minimal viable product, call it a demo, then yeah, you can reach out to your local community and say, hey, what do you think? Going after VCs at that point, you know, VCs are in principle people that are very scared to invest the money. And two, they have many options. So if they would already have you in the partner meeting, they most likely have 9 alternatives of you. 9 alternatives that already make money, are maybe close to profitability. So if they have to decide where the dollar goes into, they make the safest bet.
Of course, it's not rocket science. Yeah.
To success already, and you're far off. So if you want to hear more no's, then please feel free. Send it to every VC, which I wouldn't do because, and that's the second advice, if you happen to know someone that knows an investor, go via the intro. Don't go directly. Let someone do a warm intro and say, hey, I'm familiar with this person. I know he or she is doing very well. They actually have a demo. Would you be able to have a look at it? And maybe if you like it, can I facilitate an intro? That's a warm intro. And you don't have to come in cold, say, hey, I got this demo. We're working our asses off and we would like to raise some funding. Would you be interested? They get these kind of messages every day, which is sort of parked. But if a friend of the investor makes an intro, hey, it comes in more warm.
Absolutely. Look, I think a lot of things that you're saying are simple common sense. It's not rocket science that somebody would choose a more developed product over yours. It's normal. They have to see the return on investment. Okay, so now we've moved to the next one, right? So you've got the idea, you've got the prototype, you've approached the investor. Now it comes to the negotiation. What's going to happen? At an early stage, how much equity have you seen people part with? What is a good kind of, minimum equity that you should be parting with? What is something that you have to say no to and go back to the drawing board again, or work some more time, the bootstrap?
I look at, so Now we're talking about dreaming. I always tell people, what are you dreaming? Where do you envision your company in 5, 6 years from now? You need to dream. So let's say that you envision that your company will be worth 10 million or 50 million in the future. What does it need? What do you need to reach that number? I call that the magical number. So the amount that is necessary. So first of all, you have to raise money before the money is before your account is empty. So start raising in time, not a month before, like, oh, we're short of money. No, take time, because raising money, it takes time, longer than you always expect. Secondly, raise what you need plus extra. So, and the plus extra, I always say, things will not go according plan. It never will, it never shall. And if it does, then good for you. But you always create some extra runway. Don't raise money just for production, because then you don't have money for marketing. So raise money plus marketing plus unexpected. Then secondly, if you basically say, yeah, I only want to give you 10%, you automatically create a valuation. And that's stupid, because that valuation might be too high for your next round, which then you have to go back and disappoint every investor that get in by saying, yeah, no, we have to go lower. So it's not about the valuation at that point. I feel it's important to raise the money to actually make it to the next stage. Let's call that a Series A, where valuation does matter. So at first, raise the money to make sure that you can launch your game, you can do some marketing, gain some traction, and during that phase, be able to raise more based on the data that you have as an output for the next group of investors.
Okay, makes sense. Okay, all right. So now what you've done is you've been able to raise in the stages. Okay, so now you've raised your first investment. You're actually deploying the capital properly. What happens if at that point in time still things didn't turn out as well as you expected, right? So what happens in this scenario that you raised capital, but you burned the cash, or you didn't use it wisely enough, or simply things didn't go your way and you've lost the money? Next time when you're raising, because let's say you're still interested in raising and still interested in pursuing gaming as an industry, does that look bad on your CV, or is it okay?
No, I mean, investors do know that it is a risk. Investing is a risky business. So obviously they're not going to cheer and say hallelujah. No, I mean, but for investors, it can also, well, in their income tax, maybe they can do something. So that, but then we're going too deep. So don't look too much at that. The thing I can say is that if you feel, so put it like this: in the morning, you're in front of the mirror, and most likely in the evening too. Maybe occasionally between there more, I don't know. But normally I would be in front of the mirror 2 times a day. Then I stare at myself while brushing my teeth, washing my face, whatever. But then I have to be honest, because I wouldn't be very smart if I would lie to myself. So if I look in the deepest of my eyes, then I would know if something would go well or not. So the moment you feel things are not going well and you have some cash in the bank, be ruthless, make the change, because otherwise you're going to be slaughtered anyways and you end up with zero. So rather change when you have the money, instead of wait for that last month that you can just barely pay out yourself and your employees, and that's it. So be ruthless when it comes to making decisions that are important for the growth and the continuous of your company.
Okay, I think that is very critical advice. Thank you so much for saying it. Okay, so I can understand why people listen to your podcast, by the way.
Okay.
No, very true, right? Because I think that's key. Instead of waiting until you've burned the last penny that you had, and then actually you're going back to the investors and saying, look, I wasted all of your money. Step out, jump out. So you can actually save some money for the investor and be honest with them. Change course.
I would be extremely happy if you would. because then it means that at least you take the money serious.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, oh yeah, well, let's continue, and then what I said, you come to the last month, and it's like, oh, now we have an issue, and of course there will be investors that will say, when you actually say, well, I think I can optimize this and do this, and they do a bridge funding, because that's the question to your, or the answer to your question. Yeah, you could do a bridge funding, just get a little bit of a longer runway where you might get results XYZ, and then you can go to funding. Bridge funding is not always the best scenario. For companies that are a little bit more mature, yeah, I can see it, because they can alter with certain data and can make changes where they focus more on the revenues or reducing costs. But if you actually are in the midst of optimizing a game that needs to get traction, it will be very difficult. And what is a bridge? 1 month, 2 months, 6 months? That's very difficult. And if you have your friends and families on board, or an angel investor on board, that's money that they saved, worked for. At one point, you need to be honest. And are you going to ask them for more money, knowing that it's not going anywhere? Or are you going to be upfront and say, like, hey, we still have, let's say, 100K in the bank. If I would continue, it goes out, and I don't expect, but I have an idea. What if we do X, Y, Z? The investors at the table, your friends and family, can actually listen to you, and they say, you know what? If that's your decision, we back you up.
Okay, understood. So look, the next steps, I don't know. Okay, so I've reached to the point where I'm saying in the stage, okay, you've raised your investment, now you're getting traction. Now from that stage till IPO, I need you to pitch in and
anything can go. So let's go through that roadmap. So let's say that you have one game that is gaining some traction, which is nice. I immediately would say to the team, hey, do you guys have other ideas? Because if you have other ideas, let's write them up. See them as love projects. Love projects where people can think about other games. It keeps the creativity, but also I would stimulate them to, be at a conference, look around, what are other game developers doing, look at features. Obviously, you're going to look at, you have platforms like Game Refinery who can tell you which features work well and which not. You're going to look at what can I do in in-store promotion, how can I optimize the game, everything for revenues, retention, these kind of things. So while that process is going, and your game is showing more traction, you can slowly start working on your second IP. And once you actually do that, you can actually reach out and say, like, hey, for this, we're going to need 1.5 million for a round. And you can call that a Series A, whatever. You can call it a pre-Series A. I hate all those terms, but you're raising money. And that 1.5 million is then based on, well, how can I further secure the growth of my first game? How can I develop the second game? So I'm starting thinking portfolio. Obviously, learnings of my first game will go into the second. I might actually have to hire 1 or 2, 3 people. Based on all of that, I'm creating a surrounding which I can then start calling a studio. A studio where we just spoke about has its DNA already by the founders. And the founders are very crucial in bringing along that DNA to whoever they hire. As I said, founders with track record, founders that can attract talent and retain the talent. So you might want to share, so you can have option plans, you can have warrant plans, but some upsell for the people that start working with you, because that's your human capital. And raising that money, 1.5 million, most likely comes from VCs. Now you have seed-focused VCs, so you could have 2 times 750K, 3 times 500, or 1,500,000. But most likely you will have 1 or 2, maybe 3 kind of VC investors. So secondly, if that goes well, obviously you might actually now have a sort of a board where one VC member is going in representing the other or the other 2. You're in the board, and get a damn good person that is really objective. Don't pay him or her. Give them some shares in the company. So whatever they do, they think about it needs to become better. It needs to grow because that's also good for them. Money makes the world go round. So, and that board is basically making sure you stick to your commitments. So you're creating clear KPIs. What is it that you need to do? When is the second game to be launched? When does the first game going to reach 1 million revenues in a year, or some are lucky per month? And when are we launching the second game? How are things during soft launch? All the kind of things. That's really important for us, how we look at game development. So yeah, all of that. So bottom line, what I find interesting is the road to success is making sure that investors are feeling comfortable with your story and vision.
I think another thing that you reflected, in the previous point when you were making it, I think it's very important. So investors, it is also their money, right? It's their money, or it's money that they've raised, through some other investors. So what's really, really critical, what is going to be key, is to make sure that you are not wasting anybody's money. And as much as possible, if you're staying true to that, I think that's really, really key as well, right? That you're not messing around, you're not there to waste somebody's money, you're being mindful of that. You're having open communication with your investors, you're asking for help, you've got a very strong board of advisors or your friends. The other piece that you mentioned, right, again, which I want to kind of re-highlight, don't look at every investor as, oh, this is a dollar sign. Some of the investors can later on become your dollar sign. Initially, maybe they're just going to be your advisors or mentors. And again, the mentor-mentee relationship has to be an honest one. Okay, so tell us some of the best practices, because you're also sitting on different boards, right, of different companies. So tell us some of the best practices that you've seen being adopted, and then some of the challenges that you see, which where you can offer strategies that, look, these can be easily overcome. These are common challenges, and these can be overcome, and these are the best strategies. So.
Okay, that's a broad range of questions. The challenge, I've been in the board of a company that had the first game like a huge hit, and then nothing happened after.
Oops. Okay.
So then you make a gazillion of money, but then after that, second, third game are failing. Keep confident, use the money wisely, and then you have to coach more than ever, management team, but also have group session within the company. Like, okay, what is it that we're doing not wrong? What can we do better? So whatever is happening within a studio, never treat it as I say, there is no right or wrong. There's only improvement. So, but yeah, the challenges that you have, you want to raise a certain amount of money because ideally that could make your company grow XYZ. But investors disagree, and instead of raising a full round of 5 million, you can only get 2 million. Okay, what can you do against it, or what can you do with it? A convertible. So you can going to raise 5 million, but at 1.5 million, I can already start working with the first 1.5. I can also say that if I not close, but I have a 5 million. It's a convertible, and at 2 million, the first investors that bring in the 2 million, they will get it at a discount. And as soon as I close at the 5 million round, the first 2 million comes in at a discount, and the remaining 3 at the valuation that I have in place. That's a solution when you might not raise the total amount. Then let me look. Another challenge: finding the right people. Very underestimated. Getting the right talent in. Here's my answer to that. Talent, amazing talent, is never knocking on the door when you exactly need them. Amazing talent is available when you can't afford them, when you don't need them. So always raise, always hire. Yeah, it might lead to an issue. You also have to be honest to that person. You might actually say, you know what? You're extremely gifted. You're extremely talented. Right now, I can't afford you. It needs to go from somewhere else. Or you came in too early, so for the first couple of months, I can't put you on the project that I have in mind, but I like you. And so it's a decision that person then can make, like, okay, will I work with that or not? Always raise, always hire. Other challenges? the competition is fierce. So look at your data every day. And I always say big data is bullshit. So come up with, crucial core KPIs, meaning how are we doing? Are we getting the number of installs that we need? Because based on the number of installs, we know that a percentage will actually, through retention, stay after 30 days. We know the flow of how many people percentage-wise will pay. So that means that our revenues will remain stable, but preferably increase. If you listen to the data, then you can steer the company on a daily basis. And lastly, huge underestimated after getting talent, community. I don't have to explain you why and how, but community management, localization is everything that makes important. If I'm actually playing a game and I can play it in Dutch, or I have certain ways of communicating with me, that makes it even more, the game come closer to me. So, for example, France has 14 Juillet, which is July the 14th. America has Independence Day, July the 4th. So every country has certain holidays, and those holidays you need to embrace. You need to do something with it. So be involved in the territories that you're actually launching your game or that you are active. All of that makes it that you as a developer, you not only get more international inspiration, you're also international driven. So think global, act local.
Okay, very good. I've got a question
for another 2 hours, but I don't think you would like that.
No. Why do I have to tell our audience something very exciting? So
where I feel what is really important. So everyone is always talking about a board. If you get investors on board, you have a board. And the board is there always to look in hindsight. What did you do the last quarter? Did you meet the KPIs that were needed? I like an advisory board, non-executive, non-payment. Maybe you can treat them on a dinner, or, I've had that where I had a group of people that were very talented in gaming, where I would take them once a year or twice a year when I was at GDC for a dinner, or at Gamescom for a dinner, or at G-Star for a dinner, and they would actually talk to me. And they would say like, hey, so you sent us emails, you've given us updates, here's our feedback. And that's what we call friends of the company. And why are friends of the company important? Because they might actually give you the call and say, I found someone that is really gifted, really talented, or I spoke to an investor, or I know that there is an IP available, or whatever. They are the eyes and ears in the industry. You can't be at all places because you have a show to run. You're running a game studio, and that's already difficult and competitive as it is.
I think that's a very, very important key insight. I think this is something which we don't realize, that the people around us, the ones that we've mobilized, who are our champions. It's not always about finding the investor. So interestingly, right, we've got our demo day happening for this lab that we run. It's an acceleration program for early stage entrepreneurs, and then the other one is for growth stage. And one of the key components is a demo day that we put together, where there's judging happening just to get some feedback. And there's some investors there also, but the larger community is there, because at the end of the day, it takes a village to raise a startup, right? You can't do that alone. I think that's really important. Okay, one question that we did want to ask you was about the secrets of the successful Finnish game industry. How would you reflect on that? What do you think you did right, and what can we learn?
Yeah, the fall of Nokia was the rise of Finland. That's one. To a government that is quite proactive in supporting industries. So in the past it was called Tekes, today it's called Business Finland. That also helps, because if the government does 40%, no, I have to say it differently. If you actually raise 500K, they could actually match that. At later stage, if you raise $1 million, they can still do 400K. So financial contribution meaning that once you're profitable, you have to pay off the loan. That actually helps. It's a bullshit story because it's dark and therefore a lot of people are inside and that's why they work all the time. I would say Finland has a very good mix of work and privately. They're very abstract thinkers. And mobile is in their DNA. I mean, yeah, God knows how long Nokia already existed. So, they know mobile. They have a clear thinking, but creativity is there. I think they also help each other in the community. I think when there was traction, so from digital chocolate, you went to for example, Supercell. You had the event called Slush. At the time, it was just a few tens of people. There were the closed meetings where they discussed the good, the bad, and the ugly, and they tried to help each other. That's what I expect of a local community too. So the secret sauce of Finland is, in the end, a government that was able to help. A lot of people that did try to succeed as an entrepreneur but didn't, and started to work for other entrepreneurs that were successful. So they respected the fact that they were successful and accepted the fact they were not, but learning full. They created initially success on the mobile gaming side. Also, that attracted, also via an event like Slush, a lot of investors. So investors from all over the world came to Helsinki. Still, I think the abstract way, I've looked 2 or 3 weeks ago, it was a Friday evening, and the pitches were done. I think 40 pitches in less than 2.5 hours. I mean, it was like chuck, 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 chuck. And, you know, like, no, don't like, no, don't like. For a lot of investors, that would have been really nice to go through. Sometimes pitches are really long. Keep it to the core. Keep it to the core. And, you know, the pitch, some people refer to the elevator pitch. It doesn't have to be that short, but just be clear on the core elements of the company and the vision.
Yeah. Okay, so we had a list of questions. So I'm just going to do like a rapid fire round. As quickly as possible, I'm going to ask you, okay? So tell us more about the podcast Game Consultant and why you started it and what you hope to accomplish with it in the future.
I didn't want to start it. I didn't want to start it at all, but some people said like, sorry?
Because it was hard work. Why didn't you want to start it? Because it was too much.
It's extra work. A lot of people do underestimate what it is, but the reason why is that I got people that said, I would like to be a fly on the wall with the conversations, the phone calls, the meetings you have. It sounds so interesting. Or can you ask this or that? And then someone said like, I would like to have a podcast maybe from you. So what I did is I started one where I first sent out emails and people started to give me some answers, and I was reading that. And then I thought like, you know what, I'm doing the podcast, I'm interviewing people, which is soon also going to be a video cast. But the video cast is going to be different. What we talked about in the beginning is something I would like to explore deeper. So I want to have 2-3 people from the industry, and I want to talk about diversity. I want to talk about how it is to raise money, and tell me the shitty stories, how it was to walk out of an office. You know, the worst story I ever had is that I actually went out of a VC's office and I knew they were going to say yes. And the other part of the other investor basically said yes in the beginning, but through an incompetent, I can say now, partner that was not aware that the other 4 partners wanted to do it, he said no. And they had an anonymous way of making decisions. So 1 said no, 4 said yes, and therefore that investment didn't land. And with that, the other investment of $1 million didn't land. So I was extremely disappointed. I say it nicely. So
somebody in the back.
Oh yeah, it's Sebastian. That's my son. So yeah, there's a lot of. That's a lot of challenges. So that's why I started the podcast if bottom line, if I can make one person happy with an interview I'm doing, I'm happy. I basically want to give new insights. I basically want to tell people or let people hear what other people thought. And I'm sort of privileged because I'm a very old guy in a very young industry that I can basically talk to people. And the people that do know me, they know I'm quite blunt. So no bullshit, just tell it as it is. I've witnessed bad scenarios. Trust me, shit places I've been in. But today, I'm able to actually have a talk. I am able to have a talk to people that do matter in the industry, and I can actually talk to people that need a break. This afternoon, I had a talk with a gaming company, and I basically said, okay, just tell me. So it's sometimes it's an item. It's my watch list where I can basically tell the industry, hey, I find these very interesting companies. And then you can do whatever you want. So it's informative for the industry. So the podcast itself is for the industry. I'm not doing it for the numbers. Now I have someone that is actually helping me a bit with editing because I need it sometimes. So, but we've hit now the mark of 10,000 people that listen per episode. So that actually was for me. That's why I decided, like, okay, let me continue. And that's also why I'm doing the video cast where I can talk with people, not about game development, which is sometimes very boring, but everything around it. What makes a game company? What makes the DNA? How should you, as a CEO, deal with diversity? I mean, the world is sort of on fire. How do you deal with your game company? How do you position yourself? It's more like everything around the gaming, which I would like to talk about, because I know that people are busy with that in their minds.
I think that's beautiful. I think that's excellent. And I'm going to give you a salute because I know how much hard work goes into anything. Right?
Yeah.
So for the longest time, I didn't want to do all of this online stuff simply because it's new. In a way, you also have to overcome the technological curve, right? You have to learn how to surf it. And now we're forced to do it because of COVID. So in a way, it's accelerated us in so many different ways. Tell me, because we're nearing the end, okay? We had thought that we would spend 45 minutes, but okay, we're close to an hour. I'm really happy.
I'm relaxed.
But tell us about, your key message. What key message would you like to leave behind? And I want to do it in 3 ways, okay? So somebody who wants to start a gaming company doesn't have money.
Yeah.
Okay. So what advice would you give to that particular person? Okay. Somebody who has, who is finding difficult to hire the right kind of talent. What can they do in this new world? Can they work across borders? What would you recommend? And the third one is, okay, you've been doing what you've been doing, and now you've reached your pinnacle, whatever that may be. It could be the Series A, it could be the IPO, whatever.
Yeah.
How are you going to do succession planning? And at what point in time is it okay for you as a founder to exit the company without the investors feeling that you just took the money in and, earned a good salary and then walked away, right? So
if you don't have money, you have your brains.
Okay.
I can say so much more about it, but that's the essential. And if your brains will tell you that you need to work hard, because that's the only thing you can do. If you can actually manage to, one way to another, create a demo, then you have a shot of raising money or getting some money. If it's really truly in your heart, then there should be friends and family around you that say, I can do a few thousand, bootstrap as hell, bootstrap, and with minimum amounts of money and with overtime, you can do something, because you have to work really your ass off. That's my first answer to that. The second, talent. If you're nice to the industry is nice to you. Also, you can be visible. I mean, you can actually be participating in your local community. by participating in discussions, roundtable, these kind of things, so that people start to get to know you. They start to understand what you're trying to reach, what you're going for, what makes you tick, what is your DNA of your studio. That is something that you're going to need to attract talent. And sometimes talent might be in a very large corporation where they are where they're caged, and but they have a good amount of salary. So it's very difficult for them to say like, okay, I'm just leaving that. So if you can make them part of the studio, make them part of the founders team, give them founder shares, and they take a smaller salary, then you can attract talent and obviously retain the talent. And on your last question, it's a difficult question, because if it would be if your company would be acquired, then obviously they like the founders to be staying. But after a while, you might want to perceive something different. That's everyone's own cup of tea, so to speak. If you like the company and you can bring it further under the wings of a larger corporation, then if that makes you happy, do so. We've seen recently someone getting out of a company that he founded, that funding went in, and he basically said, well, I came to a point where I figured that I'm not a CEO, and I'm actually not startup material. And he now works for a bigger company and is happy with his role. Could be. And there are also people that basically raise funding, come to a point where they take some money off the table and the rest of the money goes in the company, and then he or she might decide to leave. Now that I find tricky, because at any given stage, if you start thinking about the momentum or the idea that you might leave, it's the same with raising funding. Be there and say it on time, because the company needs to find a proper replacement. You don't want to leave with bad vibes, because it's a small industry and people might actually have a negative vibe, even if you do it for the right reasons. So manage your exit in time and be clear and be honest. And the honest part is not only to your coworkers, but it's also to yourself. And I reflect back to the mirror I was referring to. Stand in front of the mirror and wonder why you're doing it. Is it not fun anymore? Are you not capable anymore? And if you can say that out loud, someone within the company or the investor might say, listen, why don't you take 3 months off if you're not happy, if the work has been done like this? And then after 3 months, you decide. It gives you an exit for now, but you maybe want to come back because you might rethink about it. Or if you don't like to be the CTO, because you like to be working on nifty gritty tech, then we find a CTO and you can still work in the company. Sometimes there are more answers to your questions or ideas of leaving a company. Hence the advisory board, hence the ambassadors, the friends of the companies, hence your board, and hence the DNA of your company. Because if that's proper, then you can talk to all of them and they all will give you an honest answer and might even come up with solutions that you as an individual could have never come up with.
Great. Thank you so much for answering them. Do you want to talk about July 16th? Because you're moderating that particular panel.
Oh, it's the esports.
So let's tell the audience. So guys, I don't know if you know this or not, but guess what? You're in luck because you don't have to listen to boring old me in the next, what is it? Thursday, on the 16th of July, which you get to hear Reinout again. So
it's esports.
Tell us.
I like it. Esports, I'm bullish about it. A lot of esports organizations are negative EBITDA. They're not making profits. It's overhyped as I see it. But that's just the point of view. I mean, if I make the metaphor with soccer, I'm not knowing if your audience is very much with soccer, but if you see Real Madrid, Barcelona spend so much money on players, sometimes it's too much. So that's happening with esports too. But the fun part is it's tournaments. It's tournaments with pricing money, which makes people watch, which makes young kids actually want to become a professional. And if they don't become a professional, they can still become a streamer. And maybe that actually lures them into the game industry to develop games. So see it as the icing on the cake, or see it as a layer around gaming. That is esports for now. And that a mature business will grow out of it. Yes, but at this point, esports needs one thing: data that backs up the money that goes in. So making a return on how I brand certain teams. So if I would actually sponsor them, or if I would give pricing money, or if I would organize events, or whatever. Every dollar that goes into esports needs to be accountable. And at this point, esports is not there, but it's of course pure entertainment, and COVID made it accelerate sky high. I mean, parents right now know what Twitch is. Parents know what esports is. Parents are sitting on the couch watching with their kids people playing games. I mean, who would have thought that? I mean,
yes. I know. In a way, it's a little strange. Initially, I remember, I think maybe about a year back, one of my colleagues, his son used to sit and he's just watching TV, where he's watching YouTube, and he's just watching a replay of a game somebody else is playing. You're not even participating. You're just watching somebody else play. And why is that so interesting?
I mean, Sebastian just came home, said it was rainy. He went to the cinema with a friend, and most likely he will now be playing, and then I watch on my other screen, because I have screens there and I have screens there. So I'm surrounded by screens, and then if I hear him, I quickly watch, like, okay, but it's more like parental control. Those use bad words, don't be too loud, and focus on the game and do well.
Okay, so thank you so much, Reinout, for being with us, and we look forward to having you next Thursday. Guys, everybody who's listening in, we will be announcing that sooner than we announce this one, so tune in. You already know this, okay? A week from now, just block your time. So thank you so much, Reinout, for being here with us today, and looking forward to next week.
Likewise.
All right, okay, so I'm just going to do some more marketing, very naughty of me, but anyway. So we are doing a session on impacting lives. As you know, impacting lives is about relating different stories of people and why they chose a path of impact, or did the path of impact choose them. So it's about that. It's about figuring out for young people as well who want to have meaningful lives, how do you get into it? So that's going to happen on Saturday. We've got a fantastic success coach who's Pakistani, works out of Silicon Valley, Raheel Bodla, who will be joining us. So this is for Saturday at 10 p.m. Pakistan time, which is GMT +5. On next Thursday, like we mentioned, Reinout is going to be back, and he's going to be talking about esports. And stay tuned. So this is good enough. You know now what to do on your Saturday evening and next Thursday evening. Thank you very much for listening in, and Khuda Hafiz, and have a great night. Bye-bye.